This is Darth Matthew, host of the Star Wars Generations and Superhero Ethics podcast, and I find your lack of membership disturbing. You can free yourself from the ads of those rebel scum by going to theethicalpanda.com and clicking join for $5 a month, $55 a year. No more ads, only the episodes, just as the Emperor intended. We are New York and we play basketball. We're gonna win it all. We are the New York Knicks. So I and Alex are very proud of the fact that the New York Knicks won the NBA championship. But even more so, we are proud because it is Pride. This is June 2026. We're celebrating Pride. And what better way to celebrate Pride than in a galaxy far, far away in a time long, long ago? Because guess what? Star Wars is not made up of all straight cis people. And we had a couple of requests for this from fans, and so we want to spend this time today talking about who are some of the queer LGBTQIA plus characters in the Star Wars universe. I am Matthew, non-binary, queer, they, them pronouns, joined as always by my two wonderful co-hosts. Why don't you introduce yourselves, starting with Erin.
Hey, I'm Erin, she, her pronouns. I'm bisexual. I love Pride Month. I'm excited to talk about this.
I'm Alex, he, him. I am the straight cis part of this podcast, but I am a great ally, and I'm here and excited to talk about it. I love Pride Month as well. So,
Alex,
we want you to know we don't understand your lifestyle, but we support it.
Fine with me.
No, all good, all welcome, all good here.
Our token straight boy.
Let's just kind of talk about starting off. Why is this important? And Erin, I'm going to start with you as someone who, and like all of us, we've gone through our own journey of discovery and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Why does it matter to you that there are characters beyond just those who are straight and cis and non-asexual and, all the other things in Star Wars?
Yeah, I feel like for me, Star Wars has always felt like home. It's felt very accepting. It's always been a very safe, lore and, history for me to delve into. And growing up super Christian, very conservative, bisexuality is not really a thing. I'm going to be dead honest with you guys. I talk about being bi on this podcast all the time. My dad doesn't even know I'm bisexual. I'm not fully out to him, to be honest. Not because I think it would be a huge problem. I just don't feel like I need to have that conversation until there's a reason to.
Most of you just come out as not getting your parents to listen to this podcast, and we got to get our numbers up. So, but also understandable.
Everyone but my dad listened to this podcast. But no, I think it's really important for something that's been around for so long and is so important to so many people that over the years, it really does start to build out and include more people. Because like I said, it's felt safe. It's felt like home. And so now seeing I know the Resistance show, there were two characters that were kind of implied to be, partners of some kind. And one of them seemed to be non-binary. They were both sort of male presenting. And it's just the littlest thing. They're just mechanics. Nothing about sexuality or relationship is ever mentioned about them. But it's just it's showing, because Resistance was really for children, like Clone Wars originally was. It's showing children that it's okay to be in relationships that aren't strictly man, woman, cisgendered, on both sides. And I'm really excited to talk about it. I love how much they include also trans characters, because I feel like that is a part of the LGBTQ that gets left out a lot. People love to talk about how important sexuality is, but God forbid we talk about gender. So I'm excited to talk about some of the characters we have here today.
Yeah. Alex, what about yourself?
Yeah. I think that honestly, I feel like I actually, grain of salt, but I find frustration with how Lucasfilm has presented, LGBTQ plus characters, because I feel like there have been multiple instances in the major films where they've hinted at it, or there's been clear lines, Finn and Poe, or hinting at it a bit in the movie with Vice Admiral Holdo, and I just feel like they just backed off. And I don't know if that's a Disney decision, if that is, I don't know where that kind of comes from, but I feel like, I'm very happy that they explored in the books and comics, in shows a little bit, but I would really like to see it more out front in the mainstream movies, and not just here's, two, femme forward characters kissing in 1 second on screen at the end of episode 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It's definitely a lot more prominent in the books, rather like books and online media, comics and whatnot, even in some of the TV shows versus the live action like big box films, which really sucks. It's a bummer that, like you mentioned, Poe and Finn especially, like the actors were so down. Everyone wanted them to be in love. It was just the way the story was working, and J.J. Abrams didn't want to do it.
And I think that's a really important point. And I will say that the two women who kiss at the end of Rise of Skywalker, we do have names for them. Larma Dacey is the one who had been seen a couple other times in Last Jedi, I believe, and I think actually in the first movie as well. And Roby Tice. If you haven't heard those names before, don't worry, nobody else has either. They are, I think, named in the credits, but those names are never spoken because, you said, they're not important characters. There's no buildup of it. It's just that one moment in the background. And checking boxes is better than those boxes not being checked, but it definitely felt like one hell of a box checking moment.
Right.
And I think that you really put your finger on something that basically, to me, I think it's kind of a double-edged sword that's happening in Star Wars right now, which is that one thing is Star Wars is kind of a pyramid, and at the bottom is, or at the top, however you want to look at it, is the, the movies. And that's where you get the most fans. And I think therefore it's kind of the most diluted, that you're going to have probably the smallest amount of like deep lore cuts. And also it's going to be for the most mass market. And then is the TV shows, and then is the books, and then is the comics, and the video games are somewhere in between there as well. And what we've seen is that the higher up that pyramid you go, the smaller the audience gets, but also the more risks they're willing to take. And so that's where you get a lot of times stuff will happen in the films, the TV shows that seems so radical. And it's like, wait a minute, sure, Acolyte questions the Jedi, but like we've been doing that in the books for decades. We've been doing that in the comics for a long time. And I, on the one hand, I think part of what we're doing today is celebrating so much queerness that happens, especially as we get higher up that pyramid, but also talking about why it's important that it's getting further and further down, and the TV shows are doing it more and more. And why, like, to me, if we get the next series of a next big Star Wars trilogy, and not that the main character has to be gay, like it's not that kind of quota stuff, but if there's just none of that, or there's, as we saw in the Rise in the sequels, an active attempt to sort of squash what seems like some character growth in that direction, I think it's gonna be really disappointing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, Matthew, in that like I've always felt like in general, like Star Wars has taken more risks in quotes, as the quote, like the audience kind of gets smaller because they feel like, oh well, maybe if we present this in a book or in a show format, like only the really diehard fans or people who are really interested are going to see it, and so like then it's okay if we put it in the big movies, we could lose viewers. And it just feels like a kind of a cop out, kind of a cowardly tactic. It's just like, I don't know. That's why, like, I don't know. I feel like especially just, not to get into the weeds, like in Rise of Skywalker, there was a lot of like, but all over the map, a lot of like off the deep end idea about where they wanted to go. But it feels like all of them, they pulled all the punches, which is why the movie kind of fell flat, because it's like, oh, really interesting concept, but you didn't follow through with at all or explain at all. And I think, the fact that they also chose in that movie to pull back on the Poe-Finn relationship and like suddenly give Poe a female love interest that we'd never seen before. And I don't know. It just again, I felt like they really just like JJ decided to take absolutely no risks in episode 9. And it's frustrating.
And
I think the last part we said there is also really important because, and this is something that we've not talked about as much, but certainly if you listen to podcasts about Supernatural or some of those other shows like that, Doctor Who, Sherlock, people talk a lot about queer baiting and the idea of like, how much are you going to imply that something is happening? How much are you going to like hold back on it happening? Erin has gotten herself an alcoholic beverage, so hopefully that will liven up the podcast just a little bit more. But I think, and the response to that is sometimes that what they'll do is they'll kind of queer bait or just the fans will run with that theory. And then what the producers will do or the writers will do is say, okay, no, but we're going to introduce a heterosexual love interest that doesn't seem needed in the plot at all. And where it's pretty hard to believe that they're doing anything except saying, no, look, here's this person in a straight relationship. And as you mentioned, They give Poe sort of someone from his smuggler background that he can kind of flirt with, sort of, which doesn't seem to serve the plot in any important way. And even with Finn, they'd given him Rose Tico, and there was obviously a flirtation there, but the fans didn't like her, or at least one awful part of the fandom didn't like her. A lot of us loved her. And so, yet again, now, not only was he not going to flirt with Rey, he wasn't going to flirt with Rose. Now they gave him a black stormtrooper woman, which, again, another, as you just said, a fascinating concept. The idea there's more stormtroopers breaking away, that's a great concept. But as it was executed, they barely scratched the surface, and it really felt like it was just a way of saying, look, Finn and Poe are just good friends because look at the love interests that they both have. And that, to me, that feels cheap. And I think that's part of why the kiss at the end of Rise of Skywalker felt so like, it's like just throwing it in to be like, no, don't accuse us of being homophobic. Look, we have
in the last possible second of the last Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
Let's throw in a lesbian kiss, because we're so woke here at Lucasfilm with it, guys. You had so many opportunities to actually do this right, and
it just felt like they took the two male characters that could have been, queer in some way, and they were like, no, guys, don't worry. By the way, our main characters are straight. Just to clarify, they're fucking straight, okay? But these other people, there can be gay people in Star Wars, but God forbid they're like a named character that's name is spoken in the movie.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
When really they could have just left it ambiguous. They could have just not thrown in any love interest for Poe. I mean, Zori Bliss is a really cool character design, but I don't really see what she did for the overall story.
Yeah.
Other than being like, OMG, Poe has a girl he can like, which really sucks for that actress because they're very talented and good in other stuff. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. But yeah, it felt very cheap and very much like, oh, well, look, we can still do a gay kiss, but God forbid it's the main characters. And I feel similarly kind of about Lando.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
From the Solo movie, Lando in general, extremely bi-coded.
Yeah.
And I just would have loved if the droid that he had a sexual relationship would have been a man or more male-coded, quote unquote. Not that droids really have strict gender, but L3
was female voiced and I think very female coded. You're right.
Yes. Yeah.
Or a voice that the voice actress was herself female and presented as female as we understand it. And I think you're touching on a really important thing there, which is that, and we're going to start getting to some of the positives as well. This isn't just going to be about naming problems. No. I think naming the problems at the start is really important too. But one of the things, there's a number of canonized queer relationships and queer characters and ace characters and trans characters. But one other thing that's been happening that I kind of have mixed feelings of, and I want to know what you guys think of, is where a character exists sort of, at that wider stage and is coded, and then it's confirmed in a much smaller audience venue. So, for example, Lando Calrissian is very kind of swishy in the original movie. I don't think he's queer coded necessarily, but certainly he's not like, masculine McMasculine in that kind of a way. Just
Brother
the fact
with a cape.
Yeah, just the fact that he is a black character who is shown as not only the equal of, but as a potential romantic partner to Princess Leia in a way that Han can get jealous of. Like, that alone is radical for the early 80s. But by the Solo movie, he's obviously very pan-implied. And the actor has said that he, Childish Gambino's real name,
Donald Glover.
Donald Glover, thank you, has said that he very much intended on playing that. But also, apparently, in Lando's standalone comic, which is canon, he is confirmed to be pansexual. Nice. Similarly, you mentioned Admiral Holdo. Holdo, I think you get some elements that she might be queer in the movie.
Yeah.
In the book, Leia, Princess of Alderaan, which talks about her friendship with Holdo as teenagers, Holdo is confirmed to be queer. Two of Padme's handmaidens, hold on, I had it right here.
Yana and Sabe.
Yana and Sabe, thank you. You they never really get named in the movie, but in the Queen's Shadow, Queen's Peril, Queen's Hope books, they're confirmed to be in a queer relationship.
Is Sabe the one that gets blown up in episode 2?
No, yes. No, I don't believe.
It's
I'm not.
Sache, not Sabe.
That's
Sabe
Sache,
gets
thank
blown
you.
up. It's Sache and Yane. My bad.
Okay.
That was-
Okay.
Sabe also does not get blown up though, because she's one of the ones who's still around at the end of the movies, doing stuff like comics. So yeah, it is somewhat yet again, but we'll get into that later. But point is, what do you? And there's some other examples as well. Tarkin, there's a story about him in one of the from a certain point of view books. There's actually in the certain point of view books, there's a number of characters who some are big and named, some are just like a pilot of an A-wing in Return of the Jedi who are later claimed as trans or bi or something like that. What's your all take on that sort of queering characters on the page later when it wasn't on the film?
I mean, similar feeling, I feel like, where it's like, like I kind of said earlier, Matthew, like I am happy that like they are exploring it at all in the Star Wars canon universe. But again, it frustrates me that I don't know if it's just they feel like they can't, they can't present gay characters out to the main public without like losing viewership or receiving backlash. Or if they're just like, we don't want to like, cross any boundary, which is frustrating because Star Wars at its core is such a political film and has like pushed boundaries and limits forever. And it's like, we're in 2026. You're pushing no boundaries and you're crossing no limits. It just feels like you're being kind of cowardly. And to then do it in a smaller medium, again, like I'm happy it exists, but it's also like, I don't know, guys. Like, why do it in such a small audience? Why not, just explore it in the main film or in the main show and give a lot of your loyal fans who are looking for the representation an opportunity to see that on the big screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard and it's frustrating. I sometimes wonder if things could have or would have played out differently if Lucasfilm was still an independent company or not. I don't know what Disney really has to do with it. I feel like Disney often shies away from making statements like that. Yet they are, over the last 10 years, getting better about including, same-sex couples in children's cartoons as just like The Neighbors or, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know, but I wonder if, because also George Lucas is very problematic in his own right. And if he was still completely at the reins, would we have none of this? Would we have more of this?
Right.
It's hard to know.
I think for me, a lot of it has to do with when was the original made, because I was trying to think about like why something like Holdo, I'm not negative about, but it doesn't like give me a really positive feeling. So I'm like, why didn't you just have that in the movie? But for example, the book Padawan, which is one of my favorite of the Star Wars novels, and in it, for all intents and purposes, it confirms that Obi-Wan is pan or bi, or at least what basically that it is about a time when Obi-Wan is a Padawan. And forgive me, mild spoilers for the book. We've done an episode on it some time ago. In the book, he basically like gets lost on this planet with a bunch of other teenagers, all of whom have romantic relationships or at least physical affection with each other to some extent with another. And it talks about how a part of him yearns to be a part of that, and that he wishes he could go off and cuddle and maybe kiss some of the other people who are there. And the one in particular he's thinking about is another male character. And so I think it's a pretty clear, and I sort of feel like that's a character that came out in 1977. I don't mind that they didn't name it then. And frankly, I think to have named it in the prequels, I think would have further complicated the relationship with Anakin in a way that I think was not, I didn't trust the movies to do that, quite frankly, without it becoming really badly read. So to me, that's one where like, I'm fine with that. I like Tarkin being gay. I like, some of the other things like that. But yeah, someone like Holdo or like Lando, it's like, yeah, it's great that it's happening in other places, but you could have just done it in the main story.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard, and I hope we'll get there eventually, but it sucks to see how many characters had like a breath or a whisper of that in main media and then really get built out later. And it's like, wow, well, I would have loved to know this about that character when I'm seeing them in this big movie or whatever it may be. But we still have a lot of really great queer representation throughout other media in Star Wars.
Yeah. So, and I want to get into some of our favorites of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I want to say is that for a lot of people, I don't think these sorts of people are listening to this episode anymore, though if you are, welcome, we'll take your money and feel free to give us an angry review. But I think a lot of people who are very against this kind of thing will often say, oh my gosh, this is Disney, this is Disney, this is Disney making Star Wars woke. And so I want to make very clear, Disney did not come up with the first queer characters in Star Wars. It did not come up with the first trans characters in Star Wars. These were things that were happening kind of on the edges of Lucasfilm, but they were definitely there. And you all might be able to tell me more about this, but I know in the game Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, there was a character who you're introduced to who is trans. Wait, I just had it right there. I'm sorry. No. There's a character. So first of all, in the 1999 comic book, The Bounty Hunters, Aura Singh introduces us to the character Reese Cairn, who presents as a human woman but was born as a male Twi'lek. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff about that character, and like they're deceiving people, and so you can take some of that, but still, that's at least a nod in that direction. Later on in the book, in the video game Knights of the Old Republic, there's apparently a female character who will possibly romance you, whether you're a male character or a female character yourself. And then in some of the other books, particularly the 10-book series Last of the Jedi, there were some queer characters introduced and mentioned. Not as major characters, but they were there. So I wanted to kind of first name that as the idea that Disney did all of this. Disney's been expanding it, I think, because of just the times, not because it's a Disney agenda. But anyone who wants to be like, oh, Lucas would never let queer or trans or any of these characters in, that's just hogwash. That's just not the case.
Yeah. So I want to talk about one character specifically from some of the Padme books,
Yes.
Sister. And my best friend, Kit, is a huge fan of Sister. I'm going to be honest. I didn't read. I listened to those books.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember that character very well. Like, they must have been a very small part in the overall plot.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't grab me because I am someone who is cisgendered. I feel very comfortable as a woman. I was born a woman, and that's how I am happy to live. So I can't, like, something like that it doesn't hit me in the way of I personally relate to that. I'm going to catch on to this little character. But my friend Kit is non-binary. And they kind of shared that when they were in middle school, they went through a phase, before figuring out if they were non-binary or what. And it was well before like pronouns were really fluid socially and like talked about. And so being able to read that book when it came out, I'll look up the date in a second, but it was just like really cool to see a character for them that was not non-binary, but was a different gender than they were born in and was comfortable in that. And people accepted that and people talked about it. And kind of like I mentioned about seeing queer characters in Star Wars, like it's just huge to see, even if it's the tiniest touch of representation, but seeing it in your favorite media is just like so important.
Yeah. I had a similar reaction. That book came out in April of 2022. And when that book came out, The Queen's Hope by E.K. Johnson, when I got to that character, I stopped and I took a screenshot because I was reading it on my Kindle and sent it to all of my friends and was like, oh my God. And what I think is a really, really cool and obviously very intentional thing by both these individual authors, but also obviously approved by Lucasfilm and Disney. So that book comes out on April 5th, 2022. And I believe just a week or two later, the book Brotherhood by Mike Chen comes out. And in that character also appears and is once again confirmed specifically to be a male clone who has transitioned of their own volition to being a woman. And apparently E.K. Johnson and Mike Chen coordinated on that. And E.K. had this idea for the character, shared it with Mike, and asked him to kind of add on just so that people couldn't be like, oh, well, E.K. Johnson, she's very queer herself. She's just pushing this thing. It was very clear, like, no, this is a named character now in two totally different books, acknowledging that this is a thing.
Yeah. It's cool to see.
Yeah. Alex, do you have a favorite character or storyline or something like that you want to bring up here?
I don't think I've read as many of the books as y'all have, but I would say that, like, from my experience, I really liked the exploration of, both gender roles and sexuality in the Acolyte. With I'm gonna have to read this because I never a Mother Anastasia.
Mother Anastasia.
Mother Anastasia. Because it was this basically this I don't know what to call it, like a convent or a tribe of women, of really powerful.
It's called a coven.
That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. Not covenant. Coven.
Convent.
I was like, I'm thinking of the word for like witches. I couldn't think of the word. Yeah, this like powerful coven of witches, and at some point, it's like she basically says, the line is, it would be reductive.
Yeah, Leslie Headland said that it would be reductive to call the witches lesbians because, and Leslie Headland is the writer and the creator of that show, and what she meant is that like a lesbian is a person in a multi-gendered society who is a woman who chooses to only be with other women, and that theirs is a society that is specifically women only. And so her point is like that this is a society, and I think this is a really important part of sci-fi in general, of like sci-fi gives us the chance to explore things outside of our context. We live in a world where it is understood, this is not actually accurate, but it's understood that we're basically mostly born into a gender binary, and that our romantic relationships are fundamentally in a gender binary. Science fiction lets us explore all sorts of other things. And so Leslie Headland has made it very clear that she wanted this to be clearly a queer story and an exploration of love and reproduction outside of heteronormativity. But yeah, it's simplistic to just call them lesbians. Instead, it's like, yeah, what about this totally different kind of situation where there's no men around?
Which we haven't really gotten to see an exploration of. I mean, we see it in the Night Sisters, but those are just episodes here and there. We don't really get a deep dive like we do in the Acolyte, I feel like.
But kind of, because there's still Night Brothers. They don't live within the same society, but they're aware of each other and they do interact with one another every once in a while.
True. So I guess this is really kind of unique in its own in Star Wars. And another thing that I would have liked, more, just more of a deep dive into, more of a story on. But in the end, a very small vocal side of the fan base got that canceled too. And I'm sure part of the reason was that they just couldn't handle, explorations of things in Star Wars that they weren't used to. And that's what this show did, I think, at all levels across the board. And to me, like the coven and their relationship with one another and how that family and how that group grew together really fascinated me. And I was really frustrated to not get a chance to like explore that more and like learn about how they function. And I don't even know, are they even continuing it in like book or comic form?
Nothing has been said. Leslie Headland has said a couple times that like she has ideas that she wants to continue on. I think my sense is that Disney was kind of like letting that furor die down a little bit. I will say this is obviously a pretty small part of the universe, but that some of those characters have now started to pop up in the Star Wars Unlimited card game that I play. And there's been no like pushback about it or no one getting upset about that, which has been kind of nice. So, yeah. I'll also say based on the, we mentioned the Night Sisters. I think, in the same way to say all the Night Sisters are lesbians or that something like that is going on would again be reductive. We do have canonical the idea that some of them are bi or queer or lesbian or whatever it is. The character that I know best, and if you guys have played the second Jedi Survivor game, you might be able to comment more on this, but the character of Erin, who is a former Night Sister, is introduced in Jedi Survivor and clearly has a flirtation, like growing romance with Cal Kestis, who's male, and as part of her history mentions that she had a lover among the Night Sisters.
Yep.
So to me, that's her confirmed as being bi or queer some way, both sapphic and also interested in men.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I like that, because also there's something to be said for not to get on my high horse, but like the erasure of bi women who date a man and being like, well, you're with a man, so clearly you're not actually that bi. Like you were just like exploring or something.
Right.
And so I like that we have a character and there's like confirmation that it wasn't just like a fling or something, but like, no, I had a lover, it was a relationship and it was a woman. And that's something, and that everyone is fine with. Cause that's, guess what, guys? Normal.
Yeah. And that can also happen the other way where a character who's been with a woman who's been with men in the past is now with another woman. And this happens both in TV and stuff, but also in real life all too often. And it's now like, oh, okay. So now you figured out what you really were, and sometimes that is true. Like compulsory heterosexuality is a real thing. Lots of people take decades of being in relationships with people that isn't necessarily the gender they're attracted to figure out, no, I really just want to be with people with one gender. But it's by no means all, So yeah. Any other things from the TV and on film stuff? One other thing that I wanted to mention, you mentioned, Erin, that like we've seen it showing up in some of the kids shows and stuff. And here again, I think one of the attack points always is, why are you pushing this on kids? And yes, we call these things sexualities, and a lot of it's about who you have sex with, but a lot of it's also about who you have romantic love with and who you build families with. And, in both, in the two kind of most kid-coded shows of the last couple of years, Young Jedi Adventures, which is very much kid-coded, and Skeleton Crew, which I think is more like, 8 to 10-year-old coded, but also for like the kid in all of us. Young Jedi Adventure, I think a lot of adults find kind of hard to watch. Skeleton Crew, anyone can watch. But in both of those, it's a group of kids, and there's one set of parents, often or more than that, who are same gender or same sex, at least as it's presented to us. And again, I love that because, that's not pushing sexuality in any way. It's just acknowledging the reality of all these kids have families. Some of them have families that look like this. Some of them have families that look like that.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to include that in media, like, especially as it's weird to say, like, as the world grows and changes, because people who like more than one gender have been around since ancient Egypt and ancient Rome, like, but the modern world has been very adverse to it. And I think it's so cool and so important to include that for kids, because like me growing up, I was literally steeped in a community that was so one-minded that if I were to watch a TV show, like say a Disney Channel show, and see some sort of a same-sex like relationship, I would be disgusted. And I'm what, like 9 years old? Like, I don't need to have those strong of opinions, but that's just the way it feels, because that was so abnormal when I was that age to have any sort of queer relationship shown in children's media.
Right.
And I know that people love to hate on it, love to be like, drag queens just want all the kids to be gay or whatever the fuck, but I really appreciate it, and I see it as beautiful, because that'll make sure that when they go to school one day and they meet a friend who says, oh, my two mommies, they don't make that friend feel like shit or feel bad for their two mommies or feel weird about it. They just say, oh my God, that's so cool. Or just
my mommy who used to be my daddy or whatever it is,
Yeah, exactly. Like it's so important to include those things in a way that is not, although some people like to say it's in your face, it's not in your face that KB's two mothers were her parents in Skeleton Crew. Like, it's just not. And I think it's really important to show kids that.
Yeah.
Really important. Exactly. If not for themselves and their own journey of whatever their gender or sexuality may be, but just so that they can treat others with open-mindedness, unlike the way that I was.
Yeah. No, I think that's so very true. And this is like, we're talking about how to make stories better, but we're also talking about how to keep kids alive. Like so much, I mean, the rates of self-harm and of worse than that in queer youth and trans youth is incredibly high. And every study in the world shows that like showing people examples of you're not weird. Your heroes are like you sometimes, and then other people in the world are like you, and that's okay, is so valuable. I do want to mention one other thing that is going to give you a reason to feel positive about something that you probably have very little positive feelings about, because there's one more character who appeared on screen in a Star Wars project who we later found out is queer. And that is the character of Akmena. And for anyone who's wondering, who is Akmena? I see Alex's face, like searching through the Star Wars database. I don't think you're going to come up with this character, because they were played by B. Arthur in the Star Wars Holiday Celebration special.
A classic.
A classic.
I have seen it, but it's been many years.
We did an episode on it. It is, a lot of people tried to burn every copy. It does still exist, but in the novel of From a Certain Point of View, like I said, they mention a bunch of different characters from a certain point of view. She's one of them, and they talk about her having a wife, which, given how queer coded, but in a good positive way, Golden Girls was for its time. B. Arthur, I'm sure, would be thrilled with that. I don't know if it was published before her death or not, but that little moment did make me really happy.
Is this character a Wookiee?
No, B. Arthur from the Golden Girls played her. She's the bartender. She sings a song, I think, with Luke.
Oh my God.
It's just, listen, Matthew, I watched it one time like 6 years ago, and I just,
Yeah, that I unlocked part of the memory.
I don't care about your knowledge of the Star Wars celebration, holiday celebration. I care about your knowledge of Golden Girls.
Well, one, my mom watched all the Golden Girls, but I have not really watched any. Two, why couldn't be good? Why couldn't she be in a fucking Wookiee costume?
Because she's great. Like
I'm just saying, it could have happened.
It could. Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Sure.
I will withdraw that.
See, when
Anyway, go ahead.
when you brought this up, I thought you were going to talk about somebody else.
Who do you think I was going for?
I thought you were going for Grand Admiral Tarkin.
Oh yeah, no. Tell us about Mr. Tarkin.
I thought you were
Moff
going straight
Tarkin.
for Tarkin. Grand Moff. Kill me! I thought you were going for Grand Moff Tarkin. Yes. So, from a certain point of view, is, as you may know, and as Matthew just mentioned, you know, a book where they take every Star Wars film and they retell it from the point of view of side characters, people who are just like in the corner of a screen, not named, no lines, nothing, you know. And there's one called Of Mice and Men, except it's like MI5E, I think, because that's the name of the droid. It's about a little mouse droid on the Death Star that runs into Tarkin and accidentally plays a hollow image of a random stormtrooper. And there's some unnamed general with Tarkin that's like, oh my God, this stupid droid, let's have it burned. And Tarkin's like, stop. He's beautiful. Find me this stormtrooper. And on we go, these escapades where it's told from the point of view of the mouse droid. So it's all in like droid script. It's written in like check systems, do this. It's honestly a hard read, but me and my best friend read it by the pool and we were like kicking our feet and giggling because it was so gay for Tarkin. Like, and it's so funny because it's like, what do you think? Okay, wait. I read through this story and discovered this story this Pride Month because my best friend found a TikTok of somebody saying Grand Moff Tarkin is the reason they came out as gay. And I said,
you know what?
Do you mean the space Nazi is the one you related
That's
to?
wild behavior. I'm not gonna lie.
And you know what? I'm not gonna say that Tarkin qualifies as be gay do crimes because it's not be gay do war crimes. And it's not even like I support gay rights and I support gay wrongs. Like Tarkin is still an awful, awful person. But guess what? Queer people are everywhere. And the fact is, like, a lot of the high-ranking Nazis, especially the ones who really love their uniforms, were also queer. Like, queer people are not always good, because queer people are just people, like anybody else. We come in all over the place. Does not mean we're all fascists by any means. Doesn't mean none of us are. But like, yeah. So to me, the idea of that Tarkin story, I will say though, I haven't read the story. I was familiar with it. And I thought I had paid good attention to you when you told me about the story a couple days ago. But then the way you started telling it, and listeners, write in if you had the same experience. What you said was, and so he sees this mouse droid and he says, oh, he's so beautiful.
No.
And I thought we were talking about a very different kind of sexuality that I was very concerned by.
No.
Tarkin on the mouse droid? Damn.
No, the mouse droid projects an image of a stormtrooper.
Now
and Tarkin says, everybody stop. Who is that stormtrooper? He's beautiful.
I love
That's what it is. Like the mouse droid gets damaged and accidentally projects the last thing it recorded.
Got it. Okay.
And it's a random stormtrooper with acne being like, damn, this bucket gives me such bad acne. I gotta like get a new face wash or something.
Oh my God.
And Tarkin's like, my man. Like,
yeah.
How old is Tarkin?
Much older than that stormtrooper, I'll tell you that.
All right.
It's definitely an age gap situation, but it's hilarious because in it, like the stormtrooper is like, gets a message from Tarkin through the mouse droid, and he's like, shit, look, Mousy, you and I could play this real good if we do it right. Like, if I play my cards right, I could get us a transfer to Coruscant. We could be doing droid racing. Like, he's trying to use Tarkin as a sugar daddy. It's great.
Oh my God. I love it. One thing I want to kind of comment on, and this I think we especially see in the books, and this is the kind of thing that we could see a lot more in the TV shows and movies, and have seen a little bit of, is, and this is true about science fiction in general, but especially in Star Wars, and I mentioned this before, like, part of the point of going out into alien worlds is that we don't have to be stuck with the human categories that we have. You know, we can have And even back in 1977, there was some of this. Like the amount of alienness that you see in that cantina in a world where most science fiction was humans with weird ears or foreheads was mind-blowing. People like the Ithorian, the one who used to be called Hammerheads, or even Guido or stuff like that. But they were all still primarily bipedal humanoids. And in more recent books, they've really started to explore that all these things can happen. And so, and I want to just kind of lift up, I don't want to spoil too much. I'm going to be very vague here, but in the High Republic especially, we've seen there's a pair of twins who are Jedi who are both, you could describe them as trans-binary or non-binary. Part of why I'm not saying what exact term they are is because these are human terms. They don't apply. Their species is literally like not as gender. They're I think much more fluid about gender as a species than we as humans are. And that's both like there's like their philosophy of it, but also just literally their biology of it. Similarly, Hutts are able to some extent to switch genders at various points in their lives. If you think of Jurassic Park, I think it's supposed to be kind of like a reference to that, of how lizards can do that based on circumstances and things like that. There's a number of also others who are human characters or other races who are gendered or sexual and are just, in one of the first books. Wait, let me find it for a second. One of the first characters you meet, I don't have written down what book it is, maybe better because I don't want to spoil it, but is a character who is a captain on a ship where a lot of people are hooking up with each other. And one of them kind of look at the captain and like, so what about you? Do you like this person or that person? And he says, you know what? I just like being friends. I just really like having friends. And they don't use the word ace, but every ace person I know who's read that book was like, oh, that's me. And the way he talked to anyone on the asexual, aromantic spectrum has been like, yeah, that's I can see myself in that. And similarly, there have been non-binary characters with they, them pronouns. There's a character in one of the Queen's books that has neopronouns. Some of it because it's sci-fi and just different races. Some of it's because you can be binary in gender or binary in sexuality, but they're not. And I love that so much. I love that at least in those books, we're really pushing the bounds of it doesn't have to all be the same.
Absolutely. And we're seeing some of those more asexual characters on screen as well. I know in your research you had found Vernestra Rowe is considered to be more of an asexual character.
Mm-hmm.
And for anyone who's seen the Acolyte, that's the bald green Jedi with the lightsaber whip that is most likely the Stranger's master.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so cool to just like, and I don't know if this is like problematic of me to say, but like knowing that character's ace and reviewing the way they act, I'm like, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It comes together. As someone who has and is very close to some asexual people, like, yeah, it makes sense.
And also to be clear, ace can mean anything in regard to actual, like what sexual activity is. Ace is not necessarily by definition celibate. For those who have had a lot of feelings or written a lot of stories about Vernestra and that whip, just know that's still in the realm of possibility.
Enjoy.
But might not be, but you know what? You write what you want to write. Because I know that whip had an effect on a lot of people. There's one other relationship. So just kind of a banner connection for the High Republic banner endorsement. Also, just to clarify something, Erin, I know this is what you meant. Vernestra was the Stranger's master, we think, when the Stranger was a Jedi. Yes. Not that she's like secretly a Sith or something like that.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, but thank you for that.
She's pretty bad and doing some dark sidey things. But yeah, to be clear on that. Let's end then with what I think my favorite queer relationship in Star Wars, but is also very much on the just barely canonical, if you squint your eyes a little bit, a lot. It reminds me a lot of the main relationship in Legend of Korra, where it was really strongly implied, and in the last seconds of the last episode, they were supposed to kiss, but then they didn't.
Mm.
And I'm talking here about from Rebels, Agent Kallus and Gara Zeb Aurelia.
Yeah, dude.
Erin Love.
Yeah, Erin, talk about this relationship and why it's seen as queer.
Me? I've seen Rebels the least.
Alex, you want to take a shot?
I mean, I feel like I'm not overly qualified as a straight person, but I can try.
Go, straight boy, go.
I don't know. It just feels like throughout the series, Kallus, I think that you can almost even look at his what's what I'm looking for?
Arc?
Loyalty, his loyalty to the Empire. And then kind of realizing that's not who he is. And it feels like, the Empire would be an organization that makes you suppress your gender identity and, your sexuality. And it feels like, as Zeb kind of opened Kallus's eyes slowly to the evils of the Empire until you can be yourself, make your own choices. And Kallus regularly was like, I'm making my own choices. I'm going to be my own person. And I feel like, if you break through that, it would be very normal to develop feelings towards the person that kind of helped you find yourself and hope you see yourself in that new light. And as the show progresses, especially at the end, Sam shows Kallus his home, and they just are spending a ton of time together. Even at Star Wars Celebration, they gave out posters to celebrate Star Wars animation, and one of the only characters with their arms around each other was Zeb and Kallus, just hidden on the poster there.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I don't know. It feels like they've been hinting at it the whole time that there is because at no point does Zeb ever make a comment or really flirt with any female presenting characters. And neither does Kallus. And it just feels like they really threw all of that at us and then did not deliver the payoff.
Yeah. And again, I think it's, probably it just they came as close as they could, kind of Legend of Korra style, and weren't able to cross that line. Mm-hmm. But I will say that the creator, who has someone, he's been asked at cons and stuff, were you intended to be that these characters were queer, and what he said was they're two men who care about each other and love each other. And he kind of couches it a little bit as that's audience interpretation, but that you can interpret it that way, which I think is fair. The actor who played Garazeb, Steve Blum, who I think is also playing him now in live action, or at least voicing him.
He is, yeah.
Has actively championed the romantic pairing, joking in interviews that Zeb got his man in the end, and had that he the voice actor had no idea it could actually happen. And the end thing I think that really confirms it for a lot of people is that Kallus had been involved in the literal genocide of the people of Garazeb's people, and we find out that the people are rebuilding and that they're still alive, that they have this secret planet, and that Zeb takes him back there to live. And it's very much a not just hey, you should come back here because this is your penance or something, but the way it's framed is very much a come home and meet my parents. We see his introduction to Garazeb's kind of two big mentors who are kind of parental figures to him, and it really has that who's coming to dinner kind of a feeling to it. And so I think that's where a lot of people were confirmed, and I love that. And Garazeb is now appearing in some other Star Wars stuff. He was in Grogu and Mandalorian and Grogu. He was briefly in some scenes from Mandalorian, for the Acolyte. I mean, Ahsoka. Sorry,
Ahsoka, yeah,
not Acolyte. That would be very weird. I think he's probably going to be in other properties.
The immortal Zeb,
or at least was hoped to be, given how Mando and Grogu did. We don't know, but to me, that's one where, unless he mentions I got to get home to, because Kallus is waiting for me or whatever. Or probably I'll use Kallus's first name that I forget because I just think of him as an agent.
Alexander.
Unless there's some reference to him and Alexander being together, I think a lot of fans are gonna be pretty pissed. We wish it had happened before, but if Zeb's gonna continue to be a character, it's got to be confirmed for us.
Yeah, they're the ultimate enemies to lovers. What can I say?
Yeah, it is both a beautiful enemies to lovers and one of the only truly earned redemption arcs that I've seen. And I say that as someone who absolutely loves Vader's turn, but would never in a million years call that a redemption arc. That's not a redemption moment. Ventress, I think, has had some. I think Kallus to me is a lot more believable.
Fair. Kallus is the Zuko of Rebels.
Yes, very much so. I think Zuko is one of the only ones. I'd put Katra from She-Ra as probably those three are the top three.
Yeah, Zuko's one of my favorite arcs ever.
I'm going to nod and pretend I understand those references.
Avatar.
You've got to watch She-Ra someday.
I know.
You got to watch Avatar someday.
And I know it's from She-Ra. I do.
Yeah. All right. Any other last things you want to say before we wrap up this topic?
I don't think so. I think there's a a lot more. We'll have to explore in this universe as more content is made. And if there's any characters that you have resonated with as you've, read and watched and grown up, we'd love to hear from you and share with us. And we can mention them in a future podcast. But yeah, just write to us. Matthew, what's the best way to reach us?
You can reach us at matthew@theethicalpanda.com. And of course, also you can find us in any of our social media links, all of which are in the show notes for this episode.
Bang, bang.
Cool. Well, on behalf of myself, Erin, Alex, thank you all so much for listening. Go New York, go New York, go.
Yeah, you're getting to stay classy in New York City again.
Stay classy, Madison Square Garden.
See y'all. Never.
There we go.
That's what Wemby said. That's all I know.
Yeah, that's actually facts. He did say it at the end of his press conference.
He said it at the end of the press conference. See y'all. Never.
He's a loser.
And then the comment section was just calling him long and wrong, lanky and cranky.
I don't know what he thought he was doing with that comment. I don't know if he thought he sounded swag, but it was just like, all right, bro.